Miracle is a word that has somewhat lost its meaning over the years, mainly because it's been needlessly watered down, being used to describe little happenstance events in life that are of little consequence, rather than something so spectacular and profound that it defies logic and even crosses into the territory of impossible. By that description, how this next woman survived is nothing short of a true miracle. Bahia Bakari was born in 1996 in Évry, France, to parents Kazim and his wife Aziza. She would be the first of 4 children raised in a Muslim household. Not much is known about Bahia's early life, except that her father worked as a janitor and her mother was a homemaker. When she was 12 years old, Bahia and her mother planned a trip overseas to the Comoros Islands for the purpose of attending Bahia's grandfather's wedding and to spend time with relatives. The date was June 30th, 2009. Bahia and her mother travelled to Paris to board a flight for Yemen, where they would in turn board another flight for the Comoros Islands, Flight 626. The plane was scheduled to land at its destination, Prince Said Ibrahim International Airport, at 2 a.m. in the morning in the capital of Moroni. It would not complete this journey. Just minutes away from the runway, the plane conducted a circle-to-land procedure. The plane began its descent for landing, but something was wrong. According to Bahia, I started to feel the turbulence, but nobody was reacting much, so I told myself it must be normal. The plane suddenly began to fall and plunged straight into the Indian Ocean, breaking in half upon impact and spreading debris across the surface of the water. Bahia continues, I felt something like an electric shock go through my body. There's a black hole between the moment when I was seated in the plane and the moment I found myself in the water. It's important to highlight that Bahia had only had a couple of swimming lessons ever in her life. She also had no flotation device and no life jacket on. She also sustained several injuries, including a broken collarbone and hip. Definitely not favourable conditions to be saddled with while stranded in the Indian Ocean. In pitch black darkness, Bahia desperately grabbed hold of some floating debris, while all around her she could hear the voices of other survivors. But as time passed, those voices became fewer and fewer until all she heard was the sound of the waves. Up until the later hours of the following morning, Bahia continued to cling to the piece of wreckage, even falling asleep at one point due to absolute exhaustion. The Comoros Islands had lost contact with the plane before it crashed, which resulted in the Comorian government requesting assistance from any available vessels to help locate survivors. A small ship called Semina Kontu was the first to find Bahia. The crew threw her a lifeline, but unfortunately she was far too weak to grab it. One crew member, called Turafi Salimane Liborna, dived into the water in order to give her the flotation device and bring her aboard. After she was rescued, she was taken to a hospital on the Comoros Islands. While there were some who were still alive after the initial crash, after it was all said and done, out of a staggering 153 passengers and crew, Bahia was the only survivor. During her initial stay at a Comoros hospital, she was able to speak to her father on the phone, who referred to his daughter's survival as divine intervention. Within days, Bahia was flown back to France, where she received further treatment and surgery after being reunited with her father. Bahia only spent 3 weeks in hospital, but it was during that time she became somewhat of a minor international celebrity.
Bahia Bakari, as you mentioned, a 13-year-old girl who's of French nationality with Comoran descent. She was on that plane, that ill-fated plane from Sana'a in Yemen to the Comoros. When the plane was approaching it, it bailed out of its landing, according to reports and according to officials, and crashed into the ocean.
Many news articles began reporting on her survival and referred to her as the Miracle Girl. Even the French president visited her while she was recuperating. Unfortunately, it was during her recuperation that Bahia was informed that she was the only survivor of the crash, effectively telling her that her mother had also perished. In the interviews following the event, Bahia has spoken openly about experiencing survivor's guilt, stating that the realization of being the only survivor, coupled with the loss of her mother, whom she was particularly close to, was extremely difficult and led to her isolating herself for a while following the event. But once again, time became a great ally, and over the years, Bahia eventually came to terms with her grief. 1 year later, Bahia collaborated with a ghostwriter and released a memoir called I'm Bahia, the Miracle Girl. In 2022, Bahia appeared as a witness in a French court against Yemenia Airways. It was revealed that while there were high winds during the night of the crash, it was ultimately pilot negligence that was ultimately responsible for the cause of the disaster.
It was the most important testimony of my life because everything else I've done, the interviews, don't count. It's really this one that counts. So I'm very relieved and happy to have had the opportunity to speak on the stand.
Bahia and the families of the deceased received compensation of almost 1 million euros. As far as Bahia is concerned, she is now in her late 20s and has since moved to Hanover in Cuba.